Wednesday.
And the sheet check. And a pen up there in case someone comes in.
You guys having too much fun.
Really fun. I don't know.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Howard goes out. Take it away. Okay. All right. I'll call the Board of Selectmen September 1st, 2021 to order. The minutes, August 4th and the August 18th. Can we do those as one motion together, or you want to separate?
I think we were all here, right?
Yes.
Bruce, and everybody get a chance to see the minutes. And
I'll make a motion to approve the 18th.
Second.
And changing the heading of the date of a presented document from the 21st to the 18th.
Okay, so Josh in motion, Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. And we'll move on to financial reports. We have payroll warrant number 8.
I'll make a motion. We accept payroll warrant number 8.
I'll second. Second, Mark seconds. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? And we have AP accounts payable warrants 9 and 10. I'll make a motion to accept accounts payable warrants 9 and 10. Oh, I'm going to do 1, 9.
You know, we
Yeah,
go-
sorry.
Yeah.
10 is, yeah.
Second.
All right, Lou seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and AP 10. I'll make a motion on accounts payable 10.
Second.
Lou seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? I abstain. Okay.
No,
Mark abstains.
I said no,
And Josh, we have a,
no.
okay, so we have 3, 1 abstain and 1 no, so the motion does carry. All right. Okay. And presentations tonight. All right.
We have one presentation. It's going to be by a quarter of the people that you have in the audience tonight.
Yep. Right. We got to make it good.
Yeah.
Linda, can you hear everybody okay? There? Yeah. All right.
So let me give a little introduction to this for folks watching at home. We have gone out to bids twice on the Mile Street project. The town owns as a town way Mile Street, but it's also the driveway to the hospital, as most people know. And about 2 years ago, the board and the hospital, otherwise known as Lincoln Health, agreed to split the cost of reconstruction of Mile Street because it's in a very poor condition. One of the retaining walls has begun to collapse on it. And as I just mentioned, we went out to bid twice previously. Both times the bids came back considerably higher than what we had available. Andrew and I have talked. He's done a little bit more research on this as well. I've also talked to the hospital staff about reducing the scope of the project in such a way that we just address the worst of the problem, which is the actual causeway itself. And they're in agreement with that. There's also another issue that we need to address, and that's the utility lines under the causeway. And that's an issue we probably won't address tonight, but it's something we need to work with the hospital on as we go forward, and the water district. So, but I'm going to let Andrew talk about some of the specifics with regard to what we've talked about in terms of changing the engineering for the project.
Absolutely. Again, my name is Andrew Hedger. I'm a civil engineer with Gartley and Dorsey. So when this project originally went out to bid, or should I say most recently went out to bid, it was almost double the available money for this project. So it came back at about $950,000. We need to cut that scope in half to fit within the town's available funds for this project. So as you can see on the plan here, we started basically all the way down from the Bristol Road, and we had planned on finishing at the entrance to the hospital. And with the total scope that included sidewalks all the way down, new planting, drainage improvements, everything basically you could imagine kind of coming down, including some lights, granite curbing, handrails for pedestrians, everything across the access road here. So where we are, there are several options that we've kind of come up with that are potential cost savings. The first option would be to simply start this project in this location and terminate it. And terminate it somewhere in this location over here. So we would focus on the causeway itself and deal with just what needs to be repaired. So as a refresher, the causeway is eroding on this side, this northern side. There's dip holes, they've had to repair it several times. It's eroding, it's gonna become unsafe at some point in time. Right now, it seems to be hanging on to life. We might get a little bit longer out of that, another winter out of that, but something needs to be done there to address that. So the option one would be to reduce that scope, reevaluate that using current construction numbers that came in from the bids, using the value of what's here. And the big thing is to get this scope down. Part of the driving force behind these costs was the retaining wall and the walkway associated with that retaining wall, including the pedestrian handrail that had to be affixed to that area. So to try to get these costs down, one of my suggestions was we could eliminate the sidewalk entirely and still pave the full 22 plus width of road. Right now, we're proposing to put a 22-foot wide road there. It'll be a little bit wider because there'll be guardrails in place. You might get about 24 feet. But regardless, so one of the options, option one would be reduce the scope, and in addition to that is trying to eliminate this interior retaining wall and remove the block wall component from that and the sidewalk, which would allow us to set riprap in there to do stabilization on that and be able to tip it back and kind of create the side slope. So as we go up in elevation, we switch to the retaining wall because we wanted the road as wide as we possibly can without impacting the resources there, because the permitting agencies won't really let you do that. So we had to kind of build the retaining wall up, and the wall kept growing as the elevation of this road comes up to get above the flood elevation, and we end up with two retaining walls on both sides right now. So this option would be to eliminate that retaining wall, eliminate the sidewalk, and it'll give us just enough room to be able to pitch that back and stabilize it with riprap. What that would mean is you could paint the lines down there and basically give two 9-foot wide lanes, and then paint like a third the stripe on the side and give you about a 3-foot wide kind of flush paved walkway that people could kind of walk down, or you just have some extra room there. But for some pedestrian access, you could stamp it, you do some stamped asphalt, you could stripe it or do something to keep people out of it. Not a raised sidewalk, not as safe as a raised sidewalk through there, but the low volume of vehicles and the slow speeds kind of lead me in that direction if I'm truly looking at trying to save costs and get this project back into scope. I think the other options we can get into is you could look at it if you're trying to preserve the downfall of that approach is you eliminate the ability to put a sidewalk back in place. You do all that work, you get everything in place, and you would never be able to go back in. Well, not without a significant cost addition to go back in and rebuild that sidewalk, build it up, put enough width to that road. You'd lose that ability. So the other option, option two, would be to essentially repair the road as is. So you could go in, you would eliminate that northern lane, you pull that northern lane out, build a block retaining wall just along that one section, and then build the road back up to its current elevation, which doesn't get you anything for flooding, but what it does is it allows you to stabilize the road, get it workable, preserve it for the next X amount of years, and then be able to reassess. And when the town had more additional budget and funding available, you could then come back and look at potentially putting in that second retaining wall and then building these things up another 3 feet as proposed on our original plans here. So it wouldn't eliminate anything. Then you could have the time to come up with the money for the lighting and the rail and everything we needed to make that project complete as we originally designed. So that would be kind of one of the options there. Another option, which I hate proposing it because I don't know how the permitting agencies would receive this, but you're allowed to impact the resources. Well, let me rephrase that. You can't impact the resources without the permitting agency's permission. And in this circumstance, with the pricing the way it is, with the cost the way it is, we may potentially be able to get into widening this causeway out and doing some additional impact to that. I've seen them permit some things like that. It does cost a lot of money to do that. They charge you an in lieu fee for impacting these wetlands. There's minimal value to those wetlands from what we've seen just on the surface there. So it's at least a potential that we could revisit working with the agencies and try to do the cost balance of, okay, if we're going to pay X thousands of dollars to impact the wetlands and it saves us a lot of money on the other end of things in construction, it may be worthwhile and it may be a potential for this. Again, I've reached out to the permitting agencies. I haven't heard back from them yet, but it'd be worth at least potentially exploring the possibility. The benefit of widening this out and doing some impact to the resources there is that we can get back to riprap. Eliminating that block wall comes in at about $85 a square foot down the face of that. This wall is 8 feet tall and it's 200 and something feet long. I forget off the top of my head. So you can do the math real quick, realize that's an expensive wall. A riprap is less than half the cost of that. If we were able to flare that out, rebuild it, stabilize it, and kind of bring riprap up both sides of that, it would eliminate the need for that. But again, it would start making direct impacts to those resources. When we did the original permitting, we got permission to do about 100 square feet. Once you get up over 500 square feet is when you get into a more significant permit. That's when they start requiring payment in lieu fee, preservation, creation of some sort somewhere else to make up for the habitat loss. So it's a possibility. It's an option. I just was kind of brainstorming, trying to come up with anything we could to just kind of say, okay, this is what we're looking at. And then probably the final option, which is the less aesthetically pleasing, is looking at the potential of doing a cast in place concrete wall through that section. So we've seen block wall prices, which just a few years ago were half what they are now. They've been creeping up because the block wall manufacturers are just as busy as all the contractors around. So those prices have been creeping up, but we could at least explore the possibility of looking at pricing for a cast in place concrete wall, either on one or both sides of that section. It's quite honestly, it's going to be rather ugly. You can have a straight concrete wall and that's all you would get. They do some stamping on that. They do have some interesting forms, but for value and price, you can end up with a basic concrete wall. Again, that'll be about 8 feet tall along that whole section there. Granted, you only see probably about 6 feet of it, but you would have a straight concrete wall on either side of that. But it used to be precast as a way to go. That was the cheapest, most affordable. But now with those prices creeping up, we can start looking at going back to some cast in place potentially. Again, I need to price that out to see if we're even in the ballpark, but kind of brainstorming with Matt and whatnot, just looking at all the options. That was one that came to the table to say, how far do we want to take this? But ultimately, I would recommend reducing the scope, picking up this improvement, to replace that culvert in part of this as part of this scope, and then seeing which option we want to further push those numbers down so that we can get this within that original hope for the project costs.
If you were to rank the 4 alternatives from a price standpoint, roughly, I mean, you don't have the numbers here.
Yeah.
Which can you rank them from the lowest expense likely and to the highest?
If we could get the permitting agencies to allow us to eliminate all that block wall and do riprap, that would be the hands down the less expensive option.
And riprap, is that like corrugated steel or?
No, that's rock.
Oh, rock.
That's rock. Yeah,
Okay.
riprap is the large stacked placed rock.
Okay, all right.
We kind of build that up and it would kind of slope into the sides there. So it has to push out because you have the way you have to build it, but you can taper it in there.
Right.
So you get the natural rock wall in there and it would just help with bringing those costs down.
It'd be the same as what we have at our waterfront park.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. The large stuff, yep.
Based on these projects, the projected high tides that we're supposed to get in the future, what's the estimated life on each of these projects?
So this road actually has been designed to get above that flood and that anticipated flood. I believe right now, off the top of my head, the flood zone in that area is at elevation 10. And basically that road, I think the low point on that road is about 8.5, 9. So it's already below the flood elevation now. And our target was to bring this road up to no lower than 12. So all these options, except for the repair in place, would include raising that elevation up. And that's why this is the proposed profile. And you can see that we were matching the grade of the original road coming down the hill there. So we were matching that grade. We were just improving it, doing some things, and then we were tying back in as we kind of filled in. So flipping back over, that we started tying back into the existing grade right here. So this is as it goes back out towards Bristol Road. We were matching those elevations. So all of these options, except for the kind of repair in place and building a partial retaining wall, would elevate this road to get it up above those levels. And again, I mean, you can throw options in. I mean, originally we had this road being 2 feet lower, and then we pulled it up to meet the requirements and to make sure we anticipated for that. So there's a multitude of combinations in each one of those options that we could, if you wanted to save costs, design and build this, have it constructed for the first layer. The problem with that is it's excruciatingly expensive to then pull out all that pavement, you put in place sidewalks and build it up a couple of feet high. But some combination could be achieved there. It's just not as cost effective.
How long do you think the permitting process would take to get an answer?
To get a general answer, I think we could have that, within a matter of a couple of weeks, a general answer. And then what they're going to do is they're going to, in my experiences, they're going to tell me, oh, we might be receptive to that. We'll either get no, that's not going to be allowed, or we'll be receptive to that. They're not going to commit anything. And then you have to put the full permit together and submit it to them for review. So they have seen this permit. They're familiar with this project. So I would think they could go through that pretty quickly. But their review process, once if they say we can do that, it'd probably be a 2 or 3 month turnaround on the review process. I think in any scenario we have here, this is not a project that can be constructed until the spring at the very earliest, just for kind of clarity.
So you have the time regardless.
I think we do.
Of any of the alternatives, you have time to do all of the.
Yeah, I think with contractor availability, pricing of everything right now, I've been told you can't even get plastic pipe until somewhere in March or April. That's what they're looking at. So everything is backed up and just not available. So I would recommend the town kind of target fall of next year. When this goes out to rebid, I think you open it up and try to give them as much flexibility as you can and kind of put the end of year in 2022 as the finishing of the construction sequencing. Not to give them the whole year to work on it, they'd have to build it within X amount of weeks, but just to make sure we could have it done before fall and repaving time.
Can you just recap which of the 4 alternatives preclude doing widening and a sidewalk in the future?
So I think both of the first 2 options that we discussed would preclude that. I think, well, I guess it's just really, I take that back. I step back. Just that first option of eliminating the sidewalk entirely and riprapping this inside cove. So that was the first option we kind of came up with. The other options of replace, repair it in its current condition. That one you could always come back and have the sidewalk and widen the inside. And then the other options we discussed with regards to the other permitting, we could try to get that full width in there for that sidewalk to accommodate the sidewalk. So it's really just that option 1 would eliminate that.
I get a question as far as that, moving out into those wetlands to try to gain some width there so that in the future you can do something more. And you said there's a cost associated with that they would charge you. Is there a way to trade wetlands?
There is, so let me rephrase it, there used to be. You used to be able to do either preservation, you could preserve wetlands, or you could create wetlands or enhance wetlands. And then the last one always used to be an in lieu fee that you pay X amount per square foot. Now, in lieu fee is the #1 option the departments and agencies all want to see. They want to see the money in hand so that they can repair the wetlands or take care of wetlands that are most critical. So whether the town presents, oh, we have some other wetlands over here that we'd like to preserve, the departments would rather see money in hand so that they could pick the ones that are real critical and need cleanup or whatnot. So in lieu fee is always the first one that they ask for. And unless there's a compelling reason not to, which we honestly have struggled to come up with. We used to be able to, but they really want that check in hand to impact those wetlands. And that's a big if too. I want to stress that I could find out really quickly once they get back to me that they won't even consider that, because you look at what it'll take, and we're talking a couple thousand square feet straight ocean impact that we'd have to make there. So it's not unheard of, but it is a challenge for permitting, and they're going to want to make sure that everything, all the options are explored.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions from the board at this point for Andrew? Yeah.
Yeah, we hadn't discussed in depth the riprap option, but I'm intrigued by that because it still gives us the option of a sidewalk down the road.
Right.
So I'd recommend we pursue that. And if it seems like the DEP balks at that, then a fallback would be narrowing the road and, just basically making the roadway less wide and leave a space for a shorter, a more narrow sidewalk. So, but I see that as a second option.
We don't want to handicap it or handcuff it, so we can't expand it
Yeah.
10 years down the road or whatever. So it seemed like it'd be a good place to start, see what the powers that be give you for an answer.
Right.
If it's
Yeah,
a flat out
absolutely.
no, then we have to revisit the
Yep.
other options. But
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that sounds good. I mean, we'll continue to reach out to the agencies, see what we can get back, at least kind of get our foot in the door and make that determination.
Yeah. And then we can all kind of make a
Yep.
decision going forward off of that. I think
Yep.
I think the good consensus of the board. I think I see a lot of heads nodding. So
Was there an
see that.
agreement to reduce the length of the improvements? Is everybody on board with kind of shortening this project up?
Well,
And what it means is we would ultimately end up building a sidewalk to this section and it'd be discontinued from this section. This would have to be handled at a later date, some of the drainage and
I think we may
sidewalks.
have to, but
Yeah,
we
well,
don't
yeah.
want to do it in such a way that we can't put it all together later
Absolutely.
on and we're
Yeah.
spending more money long-term, which
No, I
you
just
see.
wanted to, I think it
Yeah.
was clear, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that that was the implication here.
At some point, you're going to have a sidewalk. The volume at Miles is getting larger and larger, and in the future, it's going to be even worse.
Right.
There's a lot of people walking around that campus
That's
down
right.
there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess on the cross culvert that goes from Schooner Street across,
Yes.
that's still in that project.
I highly recommend
Yeah.
putting that one in. So there's
That's
been a couple
troublesome
issues
spot,
there.
Yeah.
We have the permits to replace that now. I think the town should jump on that
Right.
to replace that with the permit we already have, regardless of the
Oh,
outcome
yes.
here.
Yeah,
Replace
yeah.
that pipe. That should be number
Yeah.
one priority here. Get that
Mhm.
pipe fixed, get it replaced. We've increased the size of that so that the water will flow through there, and then we change it from concrete to plastic. So the water will move through even faster. So I think we've added 20 to 30% capacity to that easily, which is a lot
Yeah.
for the pipe size there.
And hopefully we don't find out tomorrow when we have a storm that it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
overflowing again.
Oh, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. Exactly.
Hopefully we'd only
Yeah.
get an inch rather than 4 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want to test it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, great. We can
Yeah.
definitely proceed.
thank
with
you, Andrew.
that,
Yeah,
and,
let's-
and we'll kind of let you know where we end up from there.
Sounds good. See what
Very
they
good.
say and we'll go from there. Oh,
And
Before
Appreciate
Andrew
it.
leaves,
he's got
Yes,
some-
Matt.
he and I and Mary Ellen Barnes met with the neighbors, and they were all represented on Hodgson Street. And he's got
That's-
the
yeah.
the map right
yeah,
there.
look at
So
that.
presentation number 2. Why don't you,
Absolutely.
well, rather than
Yeah.
have me do it in layperson's terms, you can
So
explain
we
it
met
better.
with, I think, all the owners in the vicinity of the proposed project. So by kind of backing up, we were tasked with looking at this road, reviewing it, trying to come up with some drainage solutions. Number one, it's an absolute mess for drainage, ice freezes, you can't get a plow truck through there. The road is about anywhere from 10 to 12 feet, maybe 13 feet wide. So there's no two-way lanes passing going through there. So in addition to widening the road, we also wanted to look at drainage, making improvements. So we were able to meet with everybody on site to kind of review the situation, present them with our plans, show them what we've done. And what we did do is we are proposing to put an 18-foot wide road there. So it's a little narrower than a normal 25-foot road, but it kind of fits the neighborhood well. So we increased the width to about 18 feet. There'll be some curving down along the south side along these properties. We're able to maintain all their driveways and locations. We did have to negotiate and work with some of these potential landowners. They're eliminating their driveway and With the closer proximity of the road, it would be difficult to park where they currently park. So we're going to work with them, trying to get them some angled spaces or kind of open up the front a little bit to get some spaces. But after a little bit of go around, including discussions about making it a one-way road or trying to keep the road width really narrow, they all seem to be in agreement that they were on board with the proposed plan as we presented it, with a couple of those slight modifications alleviating some of the concerns. But ultimately, we're going to try to capture the water that's coming down from the cemetery, top of the hill, out of this large wetland field here. We're going to pick that all up in a pipe system, a closed system, and discharge it down into the drainage system that ultimately runs on a Church Street there to kind of clean all that up. And then we'll have a nice road surface that we'll be able to maintain, plow actually. And you can pass somebody. Right now, they told us that they ultimately have to sit here and wait for somebody to come all the way up the road. Because there's no way to go, and like I said, they ended up abandoning the potential of a one-way or considering a one-way road, which I thought was really good. I think they realized the impact of all that and the traffic flow, and the 8 or 9 houses down the other end would all have to come in through this way, and they'd all be going by their house. So we convinced them that this is where it needs to be, and everybody was in agreement that let's widen the road. What kind of drove some of this up here is that nice block wall right there, that boulder wall, and it's well within the right of way there. So you have about a 40-foot wide right of way through that section. And I really like the aesthetics of that wall, and I hated to have to remove it. First thing is we pushed all that stuff back, get it out of the way, do some grading, do some drainage in that area. But what we were able to do is just slightly fill the bottom of that wall. So we're only proposing to basically fill about a foot of the bottom of the wall. The wall somewhere between 5 and 3 feet tall. So we're just going to fill in the ground there, eliminate any of the ditching there. So then all the material, all the water will basically run onto the road system and be picked up in that drainage, and we'll still be able to turn that corner and have that nice wall exposed and be able to keep that in place. And then the same is true with everybody else's driveway. We're able to keep those in place, keep them where they are, and pave an apron. So it seemed to be well received.
Andrew, that the scope of this project, is it just on this end? Is the width of that road go the whole way?
No, just on this end. So
Just
we
on the
stopped
end,
at
okay.
Just past the last residence up here. So I
Gotcha,
think
yeah.
There's one more residence up here, but we got the kind of the bulk of it. It just kind of runs up that road a little bit.
Yeah,
I forget
just
the
that
distance.
section.
I think it's about 400 feet. And then we kind of taper right before the cemetery picks up at the top of the hill. We taper it back down where the traffic seems to subside, but at least you'll be able to kind of get through there.
Congested area right there. So
Yeah, that's it.
And this we're ending. Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the ice.
Oh, it's-
yeah, the ice. I mean, I came down here in the winter, and
It's
I mean, you
Yeah.
you guys see it more than I do, but there was 6 inches of ice on the roads, and
it's
people just
terrible.
driving through it and over it. And
Nothing you can do about it.
Oh,
no, so this will give you a nice clean sheet.
Okay.
And with the additional catch basins, I think we got 3 catch basins going down the edge, so it'll be able to pick up all that water anytime it melts off and discharge it into those basins to get rid of it.
So I'd say thank you for the team going out and
It was
organizing.
really well. Matt organized
Yeah.
it, and it was well worth it. That's for sure. So
To get everybody on the same page is
exactly
pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I was going
No,
to say
it
the
worked out well.
same thing to include all the property owners and everybody in. That's a
No, it
important
was
thing to
it was
do.
great.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one?
The next steps are going to be nail down the cost figures for both the paving and the drainage portions of the project, and go through the steps necessary to apply for community development block grant money. That would, the only portion of this project that would be eligible for that would be the storm drainage part of it. They don't pay for pavement on sidewalks or roadways. And perhaps we could use some of the rescue money, the American Rescue Plan money, for the local match for the CDBG funds. So that's kind of the plan going forward, but we have to do a low and moderate income survey of the neighborhood to see if we're even eligible to submit an application for CDBG. And we'll start on that.
When would that be due?
We don't have enough funds for the town share, even if we were to get the grant in the current fiscal year. So once we got a cost amount from Andrew and we got the CDBG approval, then we would have a figure for next year's budget. So we're looking at 2023. Well, late, well, probably it would be too soon to do late 2022. We'd be looking at calendar year 2023.
What I was wondering about is the grant, to apply for that grant. What's the time frame?
Oh, for applying for the grants typically, although this isn't always the case, but typically the grants are awarded in March, and we have to have our grant application in by the beginning of January. So we have to do all that groundwork before we submit the application.
And then that grant money is good for a couple of years?
Yes, it would be. Yeah, be similar to what we did on Church.
Yeah.
And I think, no, we didn't use grant money for Elm. Yeah, so on Church Street. Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Run, Andrew, run.
Wonderful.
So
We'll see you in a few weeks.
One more project we have Andrew working on, and we don't have too much to report to you tonight, but this is the Church Street sidewalk design. And one thought, I believe I shared this with the board. One thought we had is, since it's so tight on the north side of the road as you go up toward Main Street, let's look at extending the roadway on the south side where there's a little more room in the right of way. And he is currently working on a kind of an amendment to the design he came up with before to accommodate that.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do, and I've asked Andrew if he would be available for your second meeting in October to provide a presentation on that. And at that meeting, we'd invite all the neighbors who are interested. So it'd be a public session, basically.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
And on a side note, I did talk to Scott Abertoni at the Water District on some of the projects that we're getting going on in Church Street. I just had a quick conversation from where they left off at Pleasant up to the intersection of Main is one of their older lines.
okay. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go down and meet with him and just kind of go over it, and I'll even talk to him about that section of Hodgson Street. I know some of that stuff got replaced the last time, but
Yeah, now's the time. Perfect.
now is the
Yeah.
time. So if we
Great.
can piggyback, and there's money out there for their programs, and
Yep.
maybe we can,
definitely.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's
Together.
good, Josh. Thank
yeah,
you.
so.
Yeah.
I've already talked to both of the managers at the sanitary water district about Hodgson, and thus far, they're not interested in participating with us, but something may have changed in the
Mhm.
meantime, so it's worth
Because all
revisiting it. with
all
them.
these programs are starting to come
Yeah.
out with some recovery funds, so.
But definitely on Church Street. And I want to add one other thought. We did get the report back from Acadia Engineering on the culvert here. And I'll be asking the board to approve a change of scope for Andrew's project, because I think we need to look at some more alternatives for the sidewalk going across the culvert, as opposed to just expanding the culvert. The pricing came in
Pretty high.
very high, extremely high. And I think there's other ways to do it and bring those costs down. Perhaps a separate pedestrian bridge, perhaps some other way of doing the culvert, the widening of the culvert itself. So I'll be asking you for a change in scope for his project. We have the funds available through the donation that we received.
Okay.
So,
That
And
sounds good.
And that culvert being 22 years old, what does it look like?
Yeah, it seems, I mean, the report that, when I scanned through it, it seemed like the culvert was in decent shape. And they believed it was sized to handle the recent storms. I think the fact that you look at the stream width above it and below it, and it tells me that there's something going on
Mhm.
there that's awry, if you will. So, but as an engineer, when you look at the capacity, we don't care if the thing's up to the edge of the road, as long as it's shooting out the end of the pipe, it technically meets capacity. Any new structure would have to be quite a bit wider than that. Usually those aluminum culverts, they can last anywhere from 25 to 50 years, probably in that scenario. You might get, because it's protected by a lot of rock, you might get 10 more years out of it if it's 20 years old. but ultimately, I think it's going to need to be replaced in the future. Whether it's near or not, it will definitely need to be replaced, and it will have to be done with a stream smart crossing, and it'll be open, live bottom, and you can have a large, probably 16 to 18 foot span in there to span over that stream to let that water go and stop the potential of it ponding up. But as you saw, well, maybe you haven't seen, but in that report, the prices were really high. There are some options to play with and look at different options, look at different solutions. But in the meanwhile, I think trying to ensure that the Church Street sidewalk can be constructed, you can kind of move on and maybe treat that crossing as a separate entity. When potential funds become available, we're going to evaluate some solutions to make sure we can get 10 more years out of that thing and make sure we can pack in that, make sure it's stable and make sure it works. And if there's another option for that pedestrian crossing that it wouldn't like shoot ourselves in the foot for the future. We could potentially still use that if that culvert was ever replaced, kind of moving forward, so that we're not going all the way backwards. But so we're gonna look and evaluate that and see what we can come up with for some short-term and long-term solutions there.
How do you handle like the sewer that's running down through there? So you have to keep that elevation, so to speak.
You do, yes, yep. So everything would be below that anyways.
Just make it wider.
That's it. I've run into this several times before, and you're stuck with those elevations, and you end up with a less than perfect solution. But what you do is you make it really wide to handle that. So there seems to be quite a bit of depth. That culvert's up quite a bit up that head wall there. So there's quite a bit of elevation below from the top of that down to where that stream bed is that you'd utilize, and you'd end up, like I said, I think you end up with 16 or 18 feet wide, holding everything down.
Yeah.
It should give you the ability to go over the top of that still with some insulation and get it as close as we can and still protect it. Great.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
See you guys in a few weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Matt, do we have any citizen comments or correspondence on your end? Anybody in the? It's just you, Al. I'm sorry. All right, no comment at this time. So, yeah.
So I'll move into.
We'll move along. Yeah, move along, Matt. The town manager
Go to
items.
number 2. I sent out a draft with the amendments that you had asked me to make in the town charter. So I don't know if that's something you want to look at further and send me more ideas on changes, or how do you like to proceed on that?
Does anybody have any
I
comments or anything on that?
read it over my first read, and I mean, I think you've pretty much covered everything that we asked to cover. I'll read it again in a few days, but I think it covered pretty much what we had discussed. So
I didn't see anything that jumped out.
Just
a reread, but
a couple points. You'll see that I added in the Historic Preservation Commission because although it passed at the last election, there weren't enough votes cast at the last election to meet the state law requirement on that. So, and then the idea of changing the Board of Selectmen to a select board. Do you have thoughts on that at this point? Should we?
Well, I'll say it again. I don't think there's a need to change it. And I think everybody in town seems to be comfortable with it. We haven't heard any complaints otherwise. And, you know, we had a former female chair, and she wasn't in favor of changing it either. So I think that's indication that there's no need to sort of emphasize, you know, or de-emphasize anything that was the gender related.
I would tend to agree.
well, I guess my thoughts are, if I think tradition is tradition, but I think it's time to move forward into the more neutral world, things that we're living in today. And I have a daughter, and I appreciate that she'd have it's not a selectman, it's a select woman or a select board would be the best way to do it. And I think neutrality in this case is the way to move forward. So,
Matt, what's the, we talked about this once before, but there's very few boards that haven't changed, right? Is that,
Right.
I'm just curious to.
Yeah, I could flip through the directory, but most of them are select boards at this point, not boards of selectmen. I could get you a more exact number, but.
Yeah,
it's
it
fair to
doesn't have
say
to
that
be, but
most of them have
anecdotally,
changed.
it's,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Only concern I have is just consistency. It doesn't
Right. If-
matter to me either way, as far as what we do, as long as we're consistent. We started, making some changes, or not changes, but some of the, we're just being consistent.
well,
So
it is something that I need to remind people of continuously, that we're not a select board, we're a board of selectmen. So,
yeah, so I was going to ask.
so I mean,
will you-
that's a continuing education.
And
issue.
then I guess if that's the decision we decide to make, that going forward, that I see that we, on a remote attendance policy, everything was selectmen, and we haven't changed anything. If we're gonna do all these changes to the policies, then we do them all at once.
Right.
Or when we update
The
them.
current draft.
We
yeah.
could wait till we update them, or just like we did with the reformatting of all the ordinances.
Right.
We did that in, with just one or two articles in the town meeting warrant.
But I think by looking at some of the state things, that was an update, that I think if we're working on these things and we're updating them, we ought to put them to where they should be, where the state kind of recommends where the wording should be. Because we'll have to do it again later. As soon as somebody comes through the door and wants us to be neutral, then I think that's the way we should do it.
We did talk about the state statute, the new state statute during your workshop. And what they have done, the legislature and the governor, is they've changed the references to from Board of Selectmen to Select Board, but they're not requiring municipalities to make that same change.
Has MMA made any comments on, in the future, them looking at it being a requirement, or?
No, they
Just
didn't.
right now, it's just
No,
recommendation. Yeah.
they just said it's not a requirement now. They didn't comment on whether they thought it would be changed.
Are you aware of any other titles like board of directors or town managers, or not town managers, but town directors, or any other variations?
No, I'm not. I know in my former position, they used to be councilmen and they changed it to councilors, but I'm not aware. Then they thought they were all attorneys. So, but I'm not aware of any, similar type of gender neutral term for selectmen. It's usually select board member.
Yeah, it's my, as far as being consistent, my standardized terms, if, we're the only town that in the state of Maine that doesn't use that.
There's other board of
There's a
selectmen
few,
towns.
but
Yeah.
It doesn't be a
Oh, can we look,
pressing issue, but we can do
can we
it.
look at Lincoln County? How many?
Yes, with the towns.
Do you want to I can just
Look at
count up
Lincoln
how many
County.
still have the board of selectmen versus select board? Sure.
Yeah, let's just see what they're, see what they're doing, so.
Can I ask what their thought process is behind not changing it?
Mine? Well, I've got two daughters too, and they wouldn't have any problem with it. And it's the same reason I think that Robin Mayer didn't have a problem with it. They don't see it as discriminatory. There's more the actions of the board that would be discriminatory, not the labeling per se. If the actions were discriminatory, then that would be a real reason to do it. But it seems to me it's clear that there hasn't been any history of that kind of discrimination.
Yeah, I agree with Tom on that at this point. I also have two daughters. And I think it's more in action and whatnot. So I'm not opposed to change, but arbitrary change I can be opposed to. So we should look into it a little bit more and see what the towns are doing. I don't know.
It's always something you could do in the future if there was a reason, a compelling reason to do it. But I'm not hardlining it. I'm just saying, I don't think there's a need to change it. I would definitely feel there would be a need if there was any hint of discrimination.
It's a pretty strong being a select. It feels like, you change it to select, like special, some select group.
It sounds like a fraternity or something, or a hidden society. Whatever. I
But
mean,
it'd be interesting to see what the
Well,
other
let's-
Lincoln County
yeah.
town.
Yeah, let's,
Okay, I'll get that.
more
for you.
discussion. We don't have to.
And then, yeah, if you have any other comments on the charter or any other changes, why don't you send those to me? If we want to have this on the warrant for the next town meeting, the November special town meeting, is what we'd have to have, then we need to act on it fairly quickly. So maybe by the next meeting, get your comments back to me.
Okay. All right.
Okay, September 15th meeting. I sent you an email on this. There's a recognition of one of our department heads going on that same evening. And if you'd like, we can change the time for our meeting, for your meeting. And I could keep the agenda light, and you could all have the ability to attend that recognition. So
Yeah, yeah.
it'd be a nice surprise.
Yeah.
4:30, does 4:30
Yeah.
work?
No, I
So
think
make
we
our
all like
meeting
to-
at 4:30.
yep.
Yeah, we'll come in early so we can.
Yeah, if you would make a motion to that
I'll make a
effect.
motion for September's 15th meeting. We start at 4:30 for the
Second.
Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Okay, good motion second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? All right.
And the press has been notified.
Lead reporter. Yeah.
Lead reporter is here.
All
Okay,
right.
and just an update, let you know that I still have the assessor agent vacancy on my radar. And I've talked to Jim Murphy. He's not able to locate someone who could join his firm, or even someone who could come forward and take over the responsibilities of assessor for us. So I have I have one draft of an RFP that I'd like to convert to a request for qualifications and send that out to both firms and to individuals who might be interested in submitting a statement of their qualifications that the board could consider. So it's, as is the case with a lot of employment opportunities now, it's an employee, it's an individual's marketplace. I mean, there's not a lot of people to choose from. So
That's right.
hopefully we could get some interest from a firm. I think I've mentioned that to you previously. And if we have a firm, then there would, I think there'd be more opportunity for a long-term relationship, which is something you want. I've been told several times now that our assessor's position and the nature of valuation in our community is quite a bit more complicated than most other small towns. So,
And I agree with Matt, because we've seen that over the years, that everybody does it a little different, and then
Right.
somebody has to come in and clean some stuff up, and it would be good to get a long-term relationship with.
Yeah.
thanks. And we need to hire someone who could assist us in a revaluation, because we're overdue for that.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I'm working on it.
All right.
Oh, gosh, I don't know how that got spelled wrong. I did spell check on it, but remote attendance policy. Let's see, I made the changes in that. Let me know if you have any other changes that you'd like to make in that draft. We do need a public hearing prior to the board. It's still going to be the board's action, but by state law, you need to have a public hearing before you take action on that policy. So I can set that up, maybe not for September 15th, but the first meeting in October.
Okay.
And then finally, the MMA annual conference is, for the first time since I've been here, not going to conflict with the Board of Selectmen's meeting. It's going to be on the 29th through October, the 29th of September through October 1st. If you look at the agenda for that meeting and you would like to attend, I plan to attend, let me know. It'll be in Augusta at the Civic Center. So it's a fairly easy commute. I think it'd be good. It's a good training ground for managers and elected officials. So yeah, if you want to go, let me know and we'll register you.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
And that's, and then going into official action items, I'd like you to table the code enforcement officer agreement. I thought about after I put this, I thought about this after I put it on the agenda, and there's a few items I'd like to change on it. I sent a note to the Waldeboro manager asking if she would agree with those changes. I haven't heard back from her yet. It's just been a couple days. So I'd ask you to hold off on that for now.
Yep, we can wait till you're ready and let us know.
Yeah.
On the remote attendance policy,
Oh, yeah.
we don't have an action on that right now.
Saying we don't have an
Yeah,
action on
yeah.
that
So we'll have to
tonight
table
either.
that so we can.
Yeah.
Get your,
I think I printed off the wrong
that's all right.
wrong version. Yeah, I took that off the agenda as well.
Oh, yeah, well, I may have they brought the wrong one in, so.
Yeah, that's-
All right. So the broadband committee, we want to move on to,
Yeah,
we have
and
some updates or anything from?
I have, let's if you would allow Evan to give you an update on the work he's been doing, the survey work he's been doing, and this will be his last meeting as a management intern. So
This is
Wanna-
it. I
yeah.
brought our donuts for everybody in the back. There's enough for everybody. If you lock the door, we'll be safe. All right,
So-
don't look at the second page yet. Just look at.
Oh, can't flip ahead here.
It's a secret. It's
Yeah.
a
The secret.
Handouts,
Okay.
yeah.
Matt, you were out talking to
Thank you,
people.
Evan. Thank you, Evan.
You were out talking to people on the project.
Evan was.
Oh, I thought you were. 'Cause
Evan
my
knows the deal. Have the
brother-in-law
mic.
said you
Introduce
did.
yourself.
Nope, he's been going door
His
to
name
door.
was just on the form.
Maybe he's
Oh,
been
that's why.
using my name as
Yeah.
and disguised as me, but
Yeah.
it's been Evan that's going door to
Yeah,
door.
he's a good front. Still Evan Gudkowski to the people at home. So I went out for 4 days the last 2 weeks, and I went all up and down, door to door, Egypt Road, Biscay from Rocky Run to the line, and all the way down Listener up and back. And talked to a lot of people, probably visited over 250 homes, and probably talked to a good 70 or 80 of them. If you go to the next page, this first page was the speed test I showed you 2 weeks ago. And then the next page, we've tripled the amount of responses. So you can flip back and forth and see the amount of people that have
Wow.
taken the test on one side of town. So that there is a healthy level of interest throughout.
What do the colored dots mean?
Well, there's a key right there to the left, I believe. Green is, I think, 25 to 120 something download, but that doesn't really mean anything because they're only color coded based on download speeds. When
Let's see
you
the key.
let me see,
Oh, I see.
very small dots right
Oh,
there. Yes, you might need-
jeez.
Wow.
Oh,
might
yeah,
need more
okay.
time
All right.
to see
Too long.
those.
it wasn't just me then, okay.
Yep, yep.
Oh,
But if you look at that they only color coded based on download speeds, but if you look at the upload speed section, you can see that over 50% of the people meet the state threshold for unserved of tests that have been taken. A lot of Spectrum's speeds are actually quite low, and I don't know how that will work out in terms of grant funding, but it'll be interesting to see.
Sorry to interrupt. What was the baseline for the unserved again?
The state's definition is 50 megabits download, 10 megabits upload,
Gotcha,
50 over 10. So that's some of the work that I've done so far. And then I'll be writing a budget proposal for Damascotta and Newcastle to provide more citizen engagement, especially education, and then getting the board updated and everything, as well as serving as a liaison between Damascotta, Newcastle, and Tidewater going forward. And we've recruited a pretty good committee for Damascotta. I'm pretty excited for them. We've got one here, Al, and I thought we were going to have Andrea here tonight too, but we also have Stephen Wicks, Larry Seidlinger, and I think it was
Adam.
Adam Jeffers, who's
Alex Wadena.
a newer resident that lives on Lesnar Road, and then Bruce Evans.
Okay.
Are the
Evan.
people that have,
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to.
Go ahead.
Can you just tell me, just north of the word Damascata there in the center of town,
Mhm.
you see a green and a red dot. It's a big difference in the speed. What's that attributed to?
it's hard to say. It depends on you. When you go on the website, you can zoom in directly over and you can hover and it'll show you what provider it was, whether it was Spectrum, whether it was Tidewater, DSL,
Okay.
whoever. It could be, yeah.
So
And
you
it could
think
be
it's
the
a
same.
difference in the providers, what you think?
Could be
Okay.
the different provider and it could be the same location and two different tests on different days.
Okay. All right.
So they do show that on the left-hand portion. They say total tests and test locations.
Mhm.
So what we're looking for primarily is test locations. So there's definitely a healthy interest. And I wanted to say thank you guys for bringing me into the town fold. I've appreciated my time here. And I think Damascata's got a good, healthy morale and desire to have the community be involved and looking toward progress, which not every town has that. There's a lot of people that are just soon go to work, go home and buy the groceries and not care what goes on in town. And there's a lot of good, healthy involvement in this town. And I think that's a good thing. So going forward, I'll have a budget proposal for the two towns in the next couple days, and we'll see what my involvement will look like from there on out.
Very good.
Evan, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your work over the
Thank you. It's been
past summer here. And
Yeah,
Been fun.
and, you know, and I think it's great that by putting in the time of this, it's going to make our proposal stronger for upgrading everything in the town. So I think
Ideally.
it's a.
there's a
positive
lot
thing.
of there's a lot of education that has to be done. I talked to one gentleman who lived right on the corner of Back Meadow and Egypt, and he actually has fiber service right there from whenever they decided to run it to him, but nobody adjacent to him in any direction has it. And he was under the impression that most of the town was served by fiber. And I said, well,
Oh.
we've got quite, so if that's the interpretation that most everybody's already got it, it's just like, well, I don't need to be standing out here in the 90-degree heat then, do I? Guess I'll just go home. So a lot of people don't know what I was telling Mark this earlier. A lot of people don't know what they have. They don't know what they're missing and they don't know what they could be having. And a lot of people don't know the difference. So there's a lot of education to be done. And I'm excited to see what the barriers are going to be.
thank you for all that work. That's a huge help for the
Yeah.
town going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Having all this information gathered up and working with, Newcastle as well and helping,
Yep.
it's been
And then I just talked to Dick Spear at Nobleboro today. So going to run by what I'm planning on doing here and then see between them, Tidewater and Newcastle, Damascata, if we can all be one happy family and be a Brady Bunch umbrella. Try and work
That'd be
together. I'll leave you with one story from the other day, being out on Egypt Road. Went down one of the camp roads and had a dog jump right in through my window, right into my front seat of my car. So I've seen all the dogs. I've seen a lot of the people. I like the dogs more than most of the people, I'll be honest. But luckily,
He was trying to escape.
luckily she was friendly. She jumped right through the window and I had right a hold of the thing. I was like, what am I going to do with this thing? And I realized I couldn't throw it back out the window and I just let it in. And the guy came out and said, yep, she had 2 previous owners die on her. So she's got some separation anxiety. So I've appreciated, that's one
a
for
good experience.
That's one for the books.
Yeah.
I've had a bad dog experience before and that's a good one.
Put that on your resume.
So yes, so please, I hope you appoint the members of the committee, especially Al, and we can start getting things into action.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Did everybody get a chance to look at the list and
Yes.
okay. What are the feelings on sizing on the committee? We don't want to be too unwieldy,
Yeah,
but what are,
I don't know that, it's similar, I liken it to the Land Use Advisory Committee. If you've got a good core of people that are active, you don't need to set a limit. But I think you essentially want to keep it similar to what Newcastle's planning, 5 to 7, 5 to 8 people.
okay.
But if
you
you
have
got,
that
if you
many,
appoint
okay.
the 5 now and someone comes forward and says, I really want to be on this committee, I don't see a problem with appointing them.
No.
Gotcha, yeah. right. Al, do you have any comments on it? Do you want to come up and? Well, you're the only one here to represent, so, yeah, come on up and introduce yourself. We'll put you on the hot seat here, so, yeah.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Al Tadino. I live on Egypt Road and been here in town now for a year today. And I'm thrilled with both the town, the people that I've met here, and we moved up from Portland. Thrilled to be here. And if I can
Welcome.
serve the town in some way, I would be glad to do that.
Right.
Yes.
How do you find because you're working online out of
Yes,
home?
I've been
How's it?
working, working from home for 12 years
Yeah.
since I left the police department.
How's the internet serving you on Egypt Pro for what you're doing?
It's not bad. It's not bad. It could be a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But then again, I think if we can get some fast internet for everybody in town, that'll open up a lot of different jobs for people, a lot of better jobs for people than, working for minimum wage someplace. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement that this
Yeah.
needs to happen. It needs to, it's an infrastructure upgrade. So, yeah, very necessary. So, okay.
Great.
Well, appreciate you stepping up, Al. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
my pleasure. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we appoint the listed individuals to a broadband committee.
I'll second it.
Mark seconds. Any discussion?
I just ask you to maybe slightly amend the motion to create the committee
Oh.
first, and then as an ad hoc committee as permitted under the
okay.
town charter.
Amend your motion?
I will
Yeah.
amend my motion to create the committee and to appoint the above of the listed individuals as members of that new committee.
And if they're watching at home, I'll just list those if that's okay. Larry Seidlinger, Bruce Evans, Andrea Kaskarian, Stephen Wicks, L. Tudino, and Adam Jeffers.
All right. So, Lou's motion. Mark, you seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay,
And
motion carries.
One more motion that I request is that the committee work with, the committee be charged with working with other communities, committees and other communities that have the same purpose. And David Lebec had asked, David Lebec, who heads up the Newcastle counterpart to this committee, as well as being a member of the select board, requested the select board and Newcastle requested that just to have that on the record. He's going to be asking his board to take the same action. So the motion would be that that the new Broadband Citizen Advisory Committee be asked to work with their counterparts in other communities for the same goals.
Lou, do you want to finish that motion? up?
I will finish that motion as stated.
And I'll second that as stated.
Okay, any discussion? Yeah, the only thing I would add to it is, as we've talked about the charter and whatnot, let's make sure that, it's a committee representative, make sure they have they elect a chair and,
Yes.
and we have minutes and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
So. about that.
But that's
So,
up
yeah.
to,
All right, all those in favor? Motion carries. Okay.
And I'm just going to add one more.
Yeah.
If any of the selectmen want to be a member of that committee, please let me know.
Okay. All right.
We'll add you. I think it's good on some of these committees to have select persons represent.
Some representation there. So, yeah.
Yes.
We'll have to look at our calendars and whatnot.
Okay.
So,
All right.
okay.
Okay, sorry. That's all I had on that item.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
That's fine. Did everybody get a chance? I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead on the official action items, the proposal for recruitment for the town manager. I'll get a chance to look that over.
Yep.
Okay. So I seeing that we've had history with this group, I don't see any reason why not move ahead with them.
Matt, you had,
Yep.
as a candidate, you had a pretty good.
Very, very
Mhm.
positive
Yeah.
interactions with Eaton Peabody, including Don Garish. So, yeah.
So we should stick with somebody that we've had success with and knows the town.
Well, they also seem to be the only one in town. I mean, the qualifications are significant.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody competing with them.
Yeah.
Oh, there are other executive recruitment firms
In
and
this
the Maine
area?
Municipal Association provides that service as well. But as
Does
you
it have
saw
someone?
from Don's proposal, he has tremendous experience.
Right.
He didn't mention the fact that he's a former president of our national association, International City Management Association. He's got just a tremendous background in local government. So he knows it from both the living as a city manager, town manager, and then also as a recruiter. So he's
Yeah,
been
what
on
Matt
both
said is what I
sides of that.
intended to say.
Yeah.
Don is a top notch when it
Yeah.
comes to this. I mean,
Yeah.
And we, if I recall, we budgeted
10,000.
10 on that.
We
Yeah.
budgeted 10,
Yeah,
and
um,
if you agree with this proposal, which is 6,000,
6, yeah.
then that leaves a little bit of room for
Yeah,
his
yeah.
expenses, which
Yeah.
are in addition to the
We'll-
6,000.
Keep in mind, yeah, because, advertising and whatnot, or any,
Yeah, so
it adds
may-
up very quickly. So
Right.
just,
Probably be a little bit more.
right, yeah, just so we're all on the same page that
Yeah.
the 10 may not cut it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
so was Don excited to get contacted?
Yeah, he was very, very pleased to be coming back. Yeah.
You need a motion on that, Matt, correct?
Yeah, and
Yep,
then I
yep.
need to
I'll,
have you at the same time waive the bid guidelines since it is over the $5,000 threshold.
All right. I'll make I can do that in one motion. I'll make a motion to waive the charter bid guidelines and accept the proposal for town manager recruitment and selection process. And I just forgot his name, Eaton Peabody Consulting Group.
Second.
All right, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, and let's move on. Selectmen's discussion items. Start down here with Tom.
Nothing this week.
I have nothing this week.
I don't have much to say either.
No, think I'm good too.
I guess just remember schools have opened and school buses are on the road, and watch out for the chief of police and his officers out in the school zone doing their speed check. So
Be safe.
because he'll be there.
All right.
I'll make a.
Do
motion.
I hear?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Lou wants a second. Any discussion? Josh and then Lou, sorry. We got excited on that one.
Yeah, we saw him out. We took it.
All those in favor? All right. Adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Did everybody sign?
Yep.
Do we have the minutes go around?
I think.
Oh, the minutes.
Minutes.
Yeah.
We didn't see the minutes come around.